welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Aquarius, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of December 2023. I hope you are well. I'm using the Crow Tarot for you today. Before the reading begins, if it resonates with you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That is link number 1 in the description box. The second link is to my private community, the Order of the Phoenix, which is over on the Circle platform. You can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost, which means you can watch for your moon sign, your ascendant sign, your north node, whatever you like, even cross watch if that's your bag, and hang out with a truly extraordinary group of people. So if that sounds like it would be of interest to you, you know what to do with that link. Right, Aquarius. How you doing? Let's have a look and see what's going on with you. Can I have 3 cards for Aquarius, please? There's the first one. We have the 2 of Swords in reverse, which is very nice. And about current energy for Aquarius. There we go. 8 of Pentacles. And what about what's coming towards Aquarius? We have the 7 of Wands. Okay, so 8 of Cups is at the bottom of the deck. First thing to notice, no major arcana at all, which may be somewhat of a relief to you with the way that things are at the moment. Excuse me. So to explain, the major arcana are kind of like the big universal energies that are at play on you at any given time, right? They're the sort of energies that force a response. You know, they're either going to force you to go within or, you know, look for answers somewhere other than where you have been looking. They might call on you to be brave or to grow, to lean into something that is uncomfortable, right? Your responses are indicated by the minor arcana. Oh, we've gone out already. What the fuck? So, in a reading where there are no major arcana cards showing up, it means that the emphasis is on you and what you do this month. That you're not being pushed in any particular way or another, which kind of makes me feel that it's a tidying up process. Whenever that's the case, it's like all of the big stuff has happened and now it's about working out where you go from here. Let's have a look and see what's coming up in the clarifiers. How about 2 of Swords, please? Well, that one did a little twirl as it came out. We've got the Knight of Swords in reverse. And we have the King of Swords in the upright, and there you are, Aquarius. Tell me about the 8 of Pentacles, please. Ooh. 7 of Cups came out sideways, and the 9 of Pentacles. What about the 7 of Wands? 9 of Swords. Don't be concerned, I'm not. And the Ace of Swords. This is wonderful. Okay. We have the 8 of Pentacles appearing again at the bottom of the deck here, so we've got it appearing twice. Let's just straighten these up a little bit so you can see what's going on a little better. And again, even with the clarifiers, no major arcana. There's a lot of sorting out here. If any of you are Aquarius ascendants, oh no, not quite. I was going to say, oh no, it will be the case, that we're kind of moving into 12th house territory once we get into Capricorn season proper, in the 3rd week of December. And that might be telling for a lot of you. If not, then you're wrapping up your solar return. Well, you're wrapping up your solar year, ready for your birthday, starting from, you know, January onwards. And both of these positionings tend to lend themselves to both a review of the year and also a kind of push to tidy up anything that is messy before your solar return comes in, you know. Anyway, it's not a good time necessarily for initiating anything too new, but it doesn't really seem like you're being pushed to do that at this point anyway. Like I said, the emphasis seems to be on tidying up, processing what you have learned in the previous year and getting ready for your solar return, or, you know, sorry, just blanked out there for a second. So There's quite a lot going on here. And in the first instance, I'm drawn to the fact that we have double eights on the table and we have double nines. Oh, and we have double sevens. Oh, it's triple eight. Now that's interesting. Because we've got the Eight of Pentacles twice and we have the Eight of Cups here. We've got the Seven of Cups and the Seven of Wands, and then we've got the nines appearing here too. Lending even more credibility to this idea that it's a tidying up process that you're going through in December. Making sense of what you have experienced, perhaps preparing the ground for what happens when the sun moves into your sign. And let's not forget, actually, the major event of January. Obviously, your birthday is a major event if you're a January-born Aquarius. But Pluto is moving from Capricorn into Aquarius, where it's going to stay for a good few months. It'll retrograde out again, covering only the last degree of Capricorn before coming back into Aquarius proper November 2024. So this event is going to affect everyone, as the movement of the outer planets often do, or always do. But speaking as somebody who has had Pluto grinding up and down her ascendant for the last 15 years, I have to say that there's no way that this experience does not change you. So whether Aquarius is your sun or your moon or your ascendant or even something else, there's a high degree of activity and engagement that is going to be initiated by this movement. So again, it makes sense to tidy up everything that you have been doing thus far, ready for this big ingress, and what it might mean for you. So I really do think it's a bit of a relief that you don't have too much going on as far as major arcana is concerned up until this point, because you've got quite enough to occupy your mind. And as I was going to say, moving through the sevens and then the eights and up to the nines, it's lending itself to this idea of completion incoming. We'll probably see much more to indicate that in January. I would not be surprised to see a whole slew of tens and the world and all sorts of things, because you are definitely coming to the end of an era here, and very much at the dawn of a new one. And I have to say, although there have been times where my dealings with Pluto have been difficult over the last 15 years, as I sit before you today at the end of 2023, I am immeasurably grateful for what's the word that I'm looking for? Pluto's influence on the trajectory of my life, I guess. So, we start with the Two of Swords in reverse, and that is, for me, it's always a pretty welcome card, because when it's this way around, the little phrase that I have to talk about this is willful blindness, which sounds a little harsh, actually, and probably isn't entirely accurate, because it speaks to the way that certain information about ourselves is screened off by our subconscious, right? We've usually got a moon in the background here, but we've certainly got a body of water, which indicates emotion and whatnot. And we see that the crow is turned away from that and has actually plonked itself between two swords. Now, the received wisdom of this card is that there is some sort of decision that needs to be made. And for whatever reason, the crow, or, the character that we see, it's usually a woman with very, very long hair, has not only turned away from her emotion and her intuition, which is to say, is not consulting those two things in the making of this decision, but there's also a blindfold. Now, the blindfold is significant because that's where the kind of willingness of or the willfulness of the ignorance comes in. It's like, no, I don't want to see that, thank you very much. I'm just here trying to make a decision between these two completely identical swords. it's an energy of not knowing what it is that you don't know, and actually not being particularly motivated to go look for it either, for reasons that sometimes we can't necessarily explain, but our subconscious knows exactly what it's doing. The fact that it's shown up in the reverse here indicates to me that the blindfold is coming off, and actually emotion and intuition are both being consulted in the decision-making processes that you are engaged with at the moment, right? We see the King of Swords down there, who is also a card who talks about decision-making processes. For me, he is the arbiter. He's the final arbiter. And in the narrative that I have, that I wrote for myself in my head, about the interplay of all of the different, the respective roles of the court hierarchy. We have the page who discovers the information, we have the knight who then transmits the information to the queen, who processes it, tests it for veracity, works out what is actually factually important, and puts it all together, hands it to the king, and the king makes the decision about it. Now, that quite aside, obviously the King of Swords represents Aquarius, and it does feel to me like you are showing up more authentically than you have done for a very long time. The things that you would not allow yourself to consult, the intuition, the emotion, what do I really want, what drives me deep within, what do I need, and where am I not giving that to myself? All these questions kind of coming up as the Two of Swords is in the reverse. And the King of Swords is saying, I am actually working with all of the information now. I mean, let's just pull a card for the Knight of Swords in reverse, because he would make a great deal of obvious sense if he were in the upright, but he's come up in the reverse for a reason, and I'd like to know what that is. King of Pentacles, it's Taurus energy right there. And the Ten of Wands. So, could it be that you have come into conflict with another fixed sign, likely someone with Taurus in their big three, who simply is not accepting what it is that you've decided? Possibly. I mean, the King of Pentacles does speak to all sorts of other things. He speaks to the home environment. It's a big thing with Taurus. Taurus rules the home and all that sort of stuff. Practical aspects of the home. We can also be talking about business, where Taurus is involved, banking and all that kind of thing. And Scorpio tends to be the other people's money part of banking. But in terms of how you look after yourself within your home environment, that's very Taurian in nature. Also, in terms of, comfort. In some ways, a representation of the old, in fact, because although Capricorn is the Queen of Pentacles for me, the King of Pentacles can represent any kind of earth sign, either elementally and situationally, or, a person. We've got the Ten of Wands there, which is interesting because it does speak to the fact that even though you are showing up authentically and being who you are, there is tension that is being caused, and it is escalating. There is the wonderful thing about the tens is they do denote an end, but I don't get the impression that we have that end just yet, and it's possibly because we have all of these 7s, 8s and 9s over here. It's just that this is becoming almost intolerable. Now, in situations where that occurs, it is generally because the universe wants us to change something much, much bigger than we'd originally intended. And in order to do that, it makes us as uncomfortable as possible. And then we get to a point where it is more comfortable to change than it is to try and remain the same. Now, the King of Pentacles will always try and remain the same because he's working to a very long-term plan with everything, right? And so whilst there might be a little bit of redundancy built in there, the last thing that the King of Pentacles is going to want to do is change direction. Now, the King of Pentacles also speaks about duties and responsibilities, particularly in the workplace and in the home. And for some of you, the issue is that you are working too hard, for sure. For others of you, I really do feel like there is this kind of breakdown in communication between you, and that's the authentic you that is now coming to the surface, and what representations of the old are wanting you to stick with. You know, there's a deeply disapproving look on that King of Pentacles face there. And if the expression of you coming out authentically has something to do with you putting down old responsibilities in favor of embracing new, which ultimately are very, very different to what you've been doing before, in whatever sense that applies for you, then we could see how this would be causing tension, perhaps with another earth sign, or perhaps just in the situation that you find yourself in. I do feel like the most tension is actually being caused by the communication or lack thereof with someone else, rather than anything that might necessarily be going on in your head right now. Tell me out, there's Two of Cups. Yeah, this is definitely in terms of, there we go, King of Swords is at the bottom of the deck again. In terms of your relationship with someone else. Now, this doesn't have to be a significant other. This could be a family member, a child, a parent, siblings, cousins, all that sort of stuff. But it could also speak to business partners. If you're looking to break something down because, frankly, it's run its course and now you want to invest differently, can see how someone who is wanting things to remain the same would be like, nah, this is not fucking cool. What are you doing, Aquarius? No, no, no. Eight of Pentacles appearing here twice could well relate this to a work situation. But it could also be speaking in terms of where your commitment has been versus where you want it to go in future. Because when we move into your current energy, obviously we've got the Eight of Pentacles sitting right there. And this Ace of Pentacles is about your discipline. It's about your motivation. It's, for some of you, it feels like it relates to the way that you have missed out on certain things. And we see these crows up in the background here, in favor of slogging away at something. And I wonder if, I've got the funniest feeling here with this Seven of Cups that you've been working away for somebody else's dream rather than your own. And this is what you are, at least from your perspective, rectifying at this point. You know, the Seven of Cups here talks about illusion. It sometimes talks about confusion. I mean, certainly we have a number of options that are available to this person here, but they're actually prevented from reaching them. And you say they're not all good. We've got money in here. We've got a star there, which represent fame and all that sort of stuff. And even down here we have a bottle of poison. Now, the biggest issue with this energy sometimes is that we don't know what each of the cups actually hold. If you think about how it's depicted in the Waite Smith, you know, you've got a chap who's like this and the cups are all up above him. Like from his vantage point, he can't see what's in them. And that's not true here. Here, your vantage point is such that you can see directly into each of the cups. And I do feel like you're realizing that not all of this has ever been your dream. It's not been your star. There's like I said, the realization that you've perhaps been working to somebody else's view of what your life should be is really, really strong here. And you've done it. I mean, you absolutely cannot critique your work ethic because you have done it. You have invested. You have committed to it. But now that you can see into all of the cups, and particularly now that you're paying more attention to what it is that you need, it seems to have brought you into conflict with someone else. Let's pull some cards for this Seven of Cups, please. Why is this here? Oh, Seven of Cups is clarified by the Seven of Cups. And the Seven of Swords, right? We now have 4 sevens on the table. Now, sevens, there's a couple of different ways of interpreting the number 7. Do we have 4 sevens? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, we do. The way that I've always seen it the kind of meaning that developed holistically from me reading tarot and looking at the interplay of the cards here was that if we go back to the fours are foundational, right? We're building something. If you think about it in terms of a shape that it represents, it's a square, it's solid, it's dependable, it's reliable, it's predictable. And because of that, you can build on top of it. You can build something that's really quite solid. That's a good thing. Then we get to the five, and the fives are the agents of chaos, as Aquarian Insight used to call them, right? And within that number, there is change. Right? We don't want things to remain the same. It often is an energy of kind of just blowing shit up, and it's not just for the sake of it. It's to allow you to learn something, regroup, refine the idea, and do it again, but do it better. Right? It's only halfway through the cycle, after all. From there we have the sixes, and the sixes represent a movement away from what was the more chaotic energy in the five, right? There's always travel of some sort where the sixes are concerned. And then we arrive at the seven, and the seven for me always seemed to indicate the point where we have arrived at a safe distance from the chaos of the five. We're not moving away anymore as we were in the six. We've reached that safe distance, and we can stop, we can turn around, and we can process and assimilate everything it is that we have learned up until now before deciding which way we're going to move forwards. Now, if you look at the strict numerological interpretations of the number seven, we're talking about someone who is pulling away from the orthodoxy. Actually, it's somebody who is looking to expand themselves, and it's often a solitary endeavour. It doesn't mean that you're going to be wandering around lonely, but it does mean that you're trying to pull away from something that has had lots of people in favour of you, and the way that you are looking to expand yourself. It can often also include, forays into science or the occult or whatever. It's a very spiritual number. And for me, it holds shades of both Aquarius and Scorpio. You can't map the signs directly onto the numbers because they actually cross over quite a lot. But if you're to boil down the essence of that, for me, it's Aquarius and Scorpio. And so it doesn't surprise me that we have such a glut of it here, because you do seem to be assessing your life. Now, remember what I said right at the beginning, that there seems to be a lot of tidying up here in terms of working out what it is that you want, right? Preparing the ground for where you're going in future. But drawing certain things to an end that you don't want to be involved in anymore, and getting ready for initiating the things that you do want to be. And they're very much things that will be under your own control and all that sort of thing, right? But it's a bit of a minefield to work it all out. The Seven of Swords can talk about taking a risk. And in some ways, we can see that would be absolutely logical interpretation from what's appearing on the table here. If you are pulling away from the status quo, if you are pulling away from something that has been established for a long time in favour of doing your own thing, right, and you are the one making the decision about that, then there are implications that you're no longer cooperating on a level that somebody else or a different situation has expected you to, and that causes tension. There is inherent within that a risk that is taken in moving away from the group. Now, because you are Aquarius, I feel like that risk is a little more easily borne than it would be, for example, than for a Taurus, because Aquarius is always turning away from the orthodoxy, right? You govern future, always looking at the horizon and going, what is over there? I think if what you have realised is that you have done that considerably less than your predisposition would have you do, then suddenly everything's a little bit tentative, right? It will feel like a risk-taking situation. So bear that interpretation in mind, but just push that to the side for a second, because the other interpretation for the Seven of Swords is that there is underhand behaviour being engaged in somewhere. And I wonder if the underhand behaviour is what is causing the presence of the Seven of Cups. Now, we see that the very first one arrived like this, and I left it like that. It's probably upsets all sorts of people, but if this has a meaning and this has a meaning, then this has a meaning too, because everything that happens at this table is part of the reading, whether there's a spider that runs across it or, you know, whether I just keep dropping cards. Like, the way that the cards come out is as much a part of the reading as the meaning on the cards. So here we have an energy of something that is turning, and I would think in your case it's been going from here, trying to turn around to there. So where there has been illusion or, you know, emotional confusion, clarity is on its way, but the card isn't quite committing to one way or the other, so it's in a process of transition. So we have you transitioning out of this almost Neptunian dream state where you have, hello Robin, there's a robin that's just jumped onto my fence. It's round, it's like a ball with a head on it. It's well fed, obviously. Hi, it's just looked at me now. Sorry, robins are symbols of transformation, and I do feel like that's a message for you. So, you know, if you're not familiar, go look up bravery, transformation. They're also very territorial, so they only tend to show up by themselves, right? So we've got another aspect of you doing your own thing being indicated by that. Anyway, this process of finding yourself and working out what you want, and understanding that it is pulling away from what somebody else has wanted, right? Something that you've been involved in. You're becoming much clearer about what it is that you want, except then this shows up. And it feels a little bit like somebody is deliberately muddying the waters with you. And it is rather underhand, because they are trying to... They're not trying to trap you. Exactly. But they are using every tool at their disposal, I feel, to keep you unclear. Because you're much easier to keep in place when you're not really sure how you feel about something. It could be that you've been having second thoughts. Everything was starting to look clear and all of a sudden it's muddy again. But if that is the case, it does feel to me a little bit like somebody is doing that to you, rather than it being a natural state of kind of, you know, second guessing yourself about stuff. I would go as far as to say, for some of you, small percentage of you, somebody is gaslighting you pretty hard. And this is the source of your confusion, not really knowing what you're doing and where you're going and all that sort of stuff. But we've got the Nine of Pentacles there. Now, the Nine of Pentacles is a very clear card of managing your own resources. It could be a desire to manage your own resources as much as the actual act of doing it. But for me, the nines all speak to the way that we manage whatever suit they represent. So in the case of the Nine of Swords, we just jump there for a second, it's about how you manage your mind. And there's not much more to it in there, but that's essentially what it is. The Nine of Wands is about how you manage your behaviours, what it is that you actually do, right? What are you physically engaged in, or, you know, even spiritually engaged in? What are your actions? Because the Pentacles for me are energetic currency and therefore represent what is at your disposal to invest. Also represents your drawer of spoons if you go down that kind of metaphorical route. The Nine of Pentacles is representing where you put your energy, what you invest in, what is yours. And I do feel like this question of what is yours, your time, your care, your effort, your money, your love, your attention, your energy generally, it feels like it's been a resource that somebody else has been tapping into for a long time. And I think part of the clarity that was coming here was a realization of that fact. Like all of your hard work, yes, you've got some sort of benefit from it, but ultimately it was chasing somebody else's dream, is what it feels like. And I don't think that you're comfortable with doing that anymore. Now, I did say that it was very interesting that we had so many 8s on the table, because from a numerological perspective, 8s deal with power. I mean, sometimes talk about money and things like that, but that is simply an expression of power. There seems to be... Well, look, there's a bit of a power dynamic that's going on here. A bit of a battle of wills, for sure. But there's something really quite important here about how you reclaim your own personal power in this situation. You know, we have your commitment and your work here, and we also have an emotional moving away from something. Like, we become powerful by dedicating ourselves to something, right? Something that we really believe in. But we equally become powerful when we walk away from something that is no longer giving us what we need. When we recognize that it perhaps was never giving us what we need. There's a battle of wills, I think, going on here. And your willingness to strike out towards the new, to take a risk, to start doing things on your own, to take your power and all of your pentacles and invest them in the direction that you want to go. It feels to me like it's kind of winning out, because you're trying to... Well, yeah, hang on. We've got the 6 of Wands at the bottom of the deck there. Because you've set your mind to something here. It's the emotions that are getting all muddy. And I would issue a caveat, not a caveat, a warning at this point. That it would be very easy to shut down emotionally from this situation. Right? That famed Aquarian detachment, which serves you well in some instances. But I think that the bigger, broader spiritual lesson that's going on here is to show you how much you have in the way of emotion, and how easily it can be manipulated by certain people. And to shut down against that is to completely immunize yourself against even the knowledge that it is happening. Right? We're creating a barrier, a wall, a boundary, where whatever happens on the other side of that is not visible to your conscious mind, and that leaves you open to manipulation, to abuse, to be taken advantage of. I can feel a lot of Aquarians flinching even as I'm saying that, but like even the strongest of us find ourselves in those situations sometimes. Give me about this 9 of Pentacles, please. Some of you quite simply might involve your mother, or it may involve you in your position as a mother, because if it's something to do with your children here. But if it's not, because the Empress is the archetypal mother, if it is not a situation that involves your mother, then what we've got here is something that is trying to be born in the dark, right? The Empress rules, well, she's Venusian ruled, actually. It's Taurus and Libra energy. It represents things that are valuable and beautiful and sensual and make you feel good. The things that truly have value to you. And maybe this is what's happening here. There's a clash of values as you are developing your own. So they're kind of developing you away from what has been the status quo. But the Empress is often depicted as pregnant as well, because she is abundant and fertile. And she's in a constant state of producing the new, right? It's very, very creative energy. And as we know, most things that are created are to start life in the dark. A very dark energy of the Empress here. And the dark that you find yourself in is because you haven't quite had a chance to plant the seed that represents the new life yet. But it is coming. Because as we move into December for you, we have the 7 of Wands, and there isn't really any other way of looking at this card right now as I am looking at this reading, other than it's time to stand up for yourself, Aquarius. You know, the worst thing I think that you could do in this situation is shut down emotionally and or allow yourself to be convinced that remaining aligned with the old is the right move for you. Tell me about the Seven of Pentacles, please. Yeah, it's interesting because the other thing that I was getting from the Seven of Wands here is that there is a matter of timing. That there's a timing issue here that needs to be paid attention to in December. What do we also have here? We have the Five of Wands and we have the Hermit. Now, the Five of Wands is a state of active conflict, and that can be within you, so you can feel incredibly conflicted about things, or it can represent a kind of external conflict. The fact that we've got it showing up here with the Hermit actually suggests to me more likely than not that it is an internal state of conflict for you. You know, maybe you thought you had everything straight, or certainly it was getting straight in your head over here, and there's something about December that sends all of that into chaos, right? So we've got that aspect of it there, and we've got this sense of timing that I was picking up here from the Seven of Wands. Notice how this wand at the top is glowing red where all the others are black, right? And the crow has his foot on it as well, so it's like it's not quite ready to deploy yet, but it's getting there, you know. And then we have the Two of Wands, which seems to be pushing you to make a decision. Now, why that is interesting is because there seems to me to have been decisions made all over the shop down here anyway. Right? There's a direction of travel that you appear to want to go in, and you've been trying to push that way. But this looks like you are pushed to make a decision that perhaps you weren't quite ready to make yet. Two of Wands is a crossroads energy. It's a kind of tipping point, if you will. And there are lots of cards in the tarot that denote decision making and the need for it. But they're major arcana. And as we've seen, there's actually vanishingly little major arcana on the table here for you. This is about dealing with the situation that you are in right now. Now, the Hermit card is asking you to dig deep within yourself in December. But the Empress card is also asking you to pay attention to what it is that you want to produce, all right? And by produce, I mean, what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of experiences do you want to have? You know, what do you want to do for a job? Where do you want to live? You know, any of the questions that might denote a personal preference from you, right? These are the ones that are coming up now, because you have to take the reins of your own life, Aquarius. Where they have been handed over to somebody else or taken by somebody else, like, you have to pay attention to those and decide what feels right for you. But I do rather feel like you've been kind of pushed into making a decision that you weren't quite ready to make. This is Mars and Leo here. And Mars obviously is very active at the moment, with him being in Scorpio. I'm not quite sure when he moves out of Scorpio. I don't know if it's in December or not. But even so, when he moves out of Scorpio, he's going to move into Sag, which is an altogether more chaotic kind of energy, but it's still absolutely moving, and it's fire as well. So, you know, kind of not as bad a pairing as it could be. I think that you've been trying to do things in what you have felt is the right order, but I wonder if for you, Aquarius, there have been a number of conflicts or battles that you have been kind of sidestepping, because you know once you go there, it's like the dominoes falling. And You've even known, perhaps, that there will be a decision that needs to be made at the end of that. I mean, that might be, well, what we're talking about here with the Two of Swords, the realization that there has to be a big break and it's coming soon. So we're just going to kind of dance around it just for a little bit until we feel personally ready to make that move. I feel like December is kind of pushing you into doing that sooner than you were comfortable with. Or we see, it's all over the cards here. And we have the Nine of Swords and the Ace of Swords. Now together they make a Ten of Swords, which is not terribly comfortable, but it does represent that end. It's not overtly stated because we don't have the Ten of Swords, but we have something that comes together to create it when all of this energy starts to flow. Now the Nine of Swords, like I said, is about how you manage your mind, and that's vitally important. But it does often talk about a loss of perspective. And I've got reasons why, and if anybody's interested, I'll bore you another time with what that is. But essentially it boils down to the fact that there's a kind of arbitrary swords up, good, swords down, bad. And it's not right across the board, but it's a useful kind of tool for working out what is going on sometimes in the tarot. And the Nine of Swords is unique within the tarot in so much as it's the one that is usually depicting the swords sitting horizontally up the wall, right? So there's a whole kind of side thing where I go off, I'll do it at another time, where there's a neutrality to those swords. So then it becomes, what is the perspective that you hold when you are looking at those swords? Because that'll tell you whether you're actually worrying about something needlessly or whether there's a basis for it. It's often a card of needing to just tweak your perspective just a little bit, not catastrophize and all that kind of thing. Now, in the Triple Goddess Tarot here, all the swords are pointing down. And I think that this is important, Aquarius, because according to my arbitrary rule, this would mean that what it is that you're concerned about actually does have a basis in reality. It is something that holds the potential to be every bit as bad as you worry that it could be. But I do think it's a necessary set of situations that are causing a break. It's a breakaway that I think needs to happen in a sort of short, sharp shock sort of way, rather than trying to kind of eke yourself away from it as you have been trying to be. Like I said, I think December, likely, it's not going to be a terribly comfortable month for you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Aquarius. It does feel like it's a little bit tempestuous. We've got Saturn and Leo here giving a kind of big struggle vibes off it, actually. But then we've got Mars in Leo over here going, well, come on then. In some ways it's spoiling for a fight, right? And I don't think it's necessarily you who's spoiling for a fight, but I think that rather than your best laid plans being how this month goes out, it feels like there's a little bit of a flashpoint here, and you are forced to make a decision that you did not want to make. Not yet. And the fallout of it feels very difficult. But this Ace of Swords is almost like the redemptive angle on all of this, because it represents the truth. It represents clarity of thought as well, and that's something very, very important to an Aquarius, right? It represents logic and rationality and all those sorts of things. It represents a mind that is working well. And the single sword here, under the light of the sun, is showing you what the truth of the situation is. The truth of the situation may be very uncomfortable, but at least you have it. And where there was mud and confusion and all those kind of things, it seems like December is full of, this is how it actually is. This is what I'm working with. Now I know what I'm doing. I've got my internal stuff clear and I'm ready to move on. I said before, you haven't had the seed to be able to plant yet. Well, the aces are all seeds. And it starts here. I would not be surprised in December if we see a whole slew of endings. And new beginnings straight off the bat for you. I think that that's highly likely. You know, not only are we coming up to your season, but we've also got that ingress of Pluto into your sign. I mean, this is going to make a big difference to your sense of power, because let's not forget that that's a lot of what Pluto has to do with. It is power, and it's about breaking down those structures that we have all got in our lives that make us feel less than powerful. Right? Pluto is a planet that will make you dig really fucking deep, and I think in order to do that, you've got to have a relatively clear space to work in. This is all about creating that clear space, because the big work is going to start from the 21st of January, you know. I don't want this to sound like it's hideously negative, because I don't think that it is. I think this is something that absolutely needs to happen. I don't think it's going to be particularly comfortable, but I do think that you're going to feel incredibly relieved once it's done. You know, it's like ripping a plaster off. Do you go really, really slowly and rip out one hair at a time? It'd be absolutely agonizing. Or do you rip it off really fast? I think you're going to rip it off really fast. It might startle you actually by how quickly you rip it off. And you have that initial sting, but then the air starts getting to it, and actually it feels a little bit better than it did while it was festering underneath that plaster, you know. At least it's clear enough that you can start the work of cleaning it all out, and that's definitely something that will start happening after that event. So, the Eight of Cups is the progression away from the confusion. Things are going to be a hell of a lot more clear by the end of December. Might not necessarily be comfortable, and it might sting a bit, but you will at least know where you stand, and you'll have that clear space within which to work moving forwards. So I'm going to go do the extended now, even though I've been prattling on for 46 minutes. So if you'd like to join me over there, you're very welcome to do so. You can do that on Vimeo, you can do that on Circle. Links for both are in the description box. If neither of those apply, it's just to kind of brace yourself, Aquarius. The thing is, I don't think you can prepare for this, because it really does feel quite spontaneous. I mean, the energies of the Five of Wands and the Seven of Wands are kind of flashpoint energies anyway. So it's likely that this is a situation that might broadside you somewhat, and you will react in the moment, and it will be a true reaction for you. And I really do feel like it's going to be you standing up for yourself. So, you know, there's not really much you can do to prepare for it. But when it happens, realize that this is what it is. And give yourself a little bit of space to process it, because I think that you will need it moving forwards. All right, know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.